I just want to show people the amount of hysterics over your one tweet, which you wound up saying, okay, it was poorly worded, but the principle stands. We should not be choosing Supreme Court justices based on their lady parts and their skin color. And this led to such affected upset at Georgetown Law School and elsewhere. But I mean, it was truly performative. And these are the two clips that I asked my team for because I remember them. First, the students who were protesting you, in quotes, wanted reparations because they missed lunch, I think it was. Here it is, SOT 37.
In terms of coming back to this reparation thing, because like this is great, but we have to do so much work to catch up for all this stuff that we missed. All I'm saying is I don't know if it's a couple dinners or lunches or something, but that would help us because I can't go home for lunch now because I need to study. I have to make up for this class that I lost. So it's little things like that. It doesn't have to be something that takes a year to figure out. It's like we know our Black students or whatever group is hurting, and we're going to give them things today, whether it's snacks, whether it's counseling, whether it's whatever. But a part of that trust is to see an immediate reaction to what we are saying. But food will be great.
We have food on the way.
All right.
She wants reparations in the form of free food.
And crime rooms, Megyn.
Wait, we have that.
Rooms.
That's the second one, SOT 38.
Really, really hard to walk out of class or a meeting in tears. And you should always have a place on campus where you can go and feel like you're not then also under people's eyes and observation. Maybe you don't want to answer a question of what's going on or what's wrong. And if you're finding that you're not getting the person you want to talk to or not getting a space that you need, reach out to me anytime, and we will find you space.
So you've got to call the dean to say, I need to cry. I can't have anybody looking at me. And he will find you space as opposed to educating law students.
And you saw the masks, by the way. This is 2022. This whole investigation, so-called, was conducted via Zoom because I never even had talked to the dean since in person because if we had gotten together, we would have had to all been masked, given the COVID hysteria, which I talk a little bit about in the book as a symptom of the failed leadership. And Megyn, look, these deans, you saw two of them there in those clips, they're generally not woke radicals. They're generally not social justice warriors. They're spineless cowards. They're bureaucrats who try to climb the greasy pole, and that means placating this illiberal mob. It's a kind of a cascade of failures in higher education.
It's called Lawless, The Miseducation of America's Elites by Ilya Shapiro. You can get it right now. It's on sale officially beginning January 14th, but let's support Ilya and get the advance because that helps drive up his numbers and we want to force him onto the New York Times bestseller list. That'll really get their goat. So you start digging into, geez, maybe it's not just Georgetown Law School that's lost its ever-loving mind. Perhaps this is a real problem because it wasn't just at Georgetown we've seen this terrible behavior. Who could forget this one? This is SOT 39, and I remind the audience we covered this. This is out at Stanford Law School where the associate dean for DEI tried lecturing Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals Judge Kyle Duncan back in March of 2023, just to give you a flavor for how widespread the craziness is that Ilya started to dig into. Watch this, SOT 39.
I'm uncomfortable because this event is tearing at the fabric of this community that I care about and I'm here to support. And I don't know, and I have to ask myself, and I'm not a cynic to ask this, is the juice worth the squeeze? Is this worth it? It isn't a setup. But for many people in this law school who work here, who study here, and who live here, your advocacy, your opinions from the bench land as absolute disenfranchisement of their rights and does land.
They're snapping. If you're snapping, you're out. I'm not hiring anybody who snaps as applause. And they're thrilled because he's a Fifth Circuit, which is a more conservative bench, and he was a Trump appointee, so that he's not allowed to speak at Stanford. And that's why she's saying, is the juice worth the squeeze? Because you've written opinions to which we object, Ilya. But you found this is not just a Stanford or Georgetown problem.
or a Yale or a couple of other. I mean, it's a particularly dangerous thing at the so-called elite schools who turn out the next generation leaders and who give each other prizes for these sorts of things. But universally, it's a lot of things going on that don't necessarily make the national news. It's not just shoutdowns of a federal judge or me. This happened to me at a different school, also in the Bay Area, what used to be called UC Hastings until they renamed it because it turns out Mr. Hastings did some politically incorrect things. The culture of silence and of self-censorship and of teaching that avoids taking serious legal theory seriously. Originalism, say, the idea that the Constitution should be interpreted based on the original public meaning of its words, which a majority of the Supreme Court, about half the federal judiciary, uses. Just to do their basic jobs. They don't have to agree with it. They should teach it. And at best, you have kind of snide remarks about how it's inappropriate and why would anyone think this way. We have broken systems of education. That's really more activism on the teaching and the faculty front, but also on the bureaucratic front. So we have now in most places, including law schools, more non-teaching staff than faculty. I don't know what all of these bureaucrats are doing. Well, actually, I do. They're orientating and training and imbuing a culture where, well, there's no such thing as objective truth, and one's rights and freedoms depend on where you are in some sort of privilege hierarchy or intersectional matrix. All this mumbo jumbo that is directly contrary to the structure of the law. They're basically saying, you students in law school, what you're learning, all of these systems and structures and institutions are illegitimate. You need to question them and turn them down. I mean, this is a huge disservice to our nation.
We are seeing DEI crumble minute to minute. You had Mark Zuckerberg last week saying it's done at Meta. No more DEI at Facebook. You have all these big companies like Caterpillar and Walmart, very well-known companies, thanks in large part to the work of Robbie Starbuck, who's been serially embarrassing them all by threatening to just make it public what they're doing, starting to run and abandon DEI. You had a very interesting legal case just last week. It was U.S. District Judge Reed O'Connor in Fort Worth, Texas, who ruled on Friday that American Airlines violated its legal responsibilities in managing employees' retirement assets by encouraging environmentally and socially responsible investing in its 401k plan. This has been happening more and more where these companies try to bend the knee to so-called ESG, which is another form of DEI, and say, we're only going to use like BlackRock to do our investments. And BlackRock prioritizes companies that'll get little pats on the back from the DEI crowd instead of prioritizing making money. And now we have a federal district court ruling saying, you violated the law. You have a legal responsibility to these retirees to make money, not to make yourselves feel like so-called good people. My point is, it's starting to crumble, Ilya, but not at the law schools.
Right. I'm optimistic, cautiously optimistic in society writ large. Like Brett Kavanaugh, I live on the sunrise side of the mountain as kind of normal people realize these excesses and what's going on. And there are market forces, after all, in the corporate world. But in academia, it's different. And the left hand doesn't know what the far left hand is doing. There are, 0.05% non-progressive professors. That's why I was so threatening that I was going to be joining the Georgetown faculty. I would have increased the number of non-progressives from 2 to 3 out of, 150. And that's why we need external forces, exogenous shocks, employers, state legislatures, abolishing these bureaucracies in state schools, trustees and donors, as we've seen since October 7th, and the disastrous testimony of the university presidents, putting pressure on these schools, saying, look, you are getting big black eyes for your handling of these things, for not enforcing your own rules. Because I tell you what, Megyn, this is not rocket science. We don't need, higher education institutions don't need to go out and theorize a whole new way of how to deal with disruption or what is the meaning of free speech or how to promote open inquiry, civil discourse. This is all established. It's a failure of will. It's a failure of not enforcing your own policies. So we're very much in the eye of the storm with respect to higher ed generally and law schools specifically. And it goes even to the accreditor. There's a monopoly on law school accreditation by the American Bar Association, which I hope is something that the Trump Department of Education changes. But the ABA puts in all sorts of nefarious rules.
Some therapists say that debt can make people feel desperate and helpless. I mean, we don't need a therapist to tell us that. That's obviously true. It can ruin your sleep. It can creep into your relationships. It can wreck your happiness. But there are ways to get help. You don't have to just sit and suffer alone and in silence. Let me tell you about Done With Debt. They have aggressive new strategies to end your debt fast. Done With Debt stands between you and your harassing bill collectors. They tirelessly negotiate to slash balances, eliminate interest, and stop the crushing penalties, all without loans or bankruptcy. Done With Debt has one goal: to wipe out your debt for good. Before you make another payment, consider a visit to donewithdebt.com. Speak with one of their strategists for free and tell them I sent you. But you do need to hurry because some debt solutions are time sensitive and you don't want to miss out. Go to donewithdebt.com. That's donewithdebt.com. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.